and the Maasland barrier protects the backside of this area. But it's not protecting it by itself. We have an extra barrier over here. That's called the Harta barrier. It belongs to the same system. So this barrier, also outside, is the biggest robot in the world because it's closed by a computer system, but the same computer at the same time also closes this barrier. Why? If you only close up here, you see what the water can still reach Rotterdam through the back door. So that's why you have a small barrier, a lot smaller than this one. Also a very different project. There's a big steel slide to go down, but both together protect Rotterdam. And then you talk about 2 million people, almost. After the flood in '53, as you saw in the movie also, that's the time the government said never again. That's the time the Delta Plan came, and every year we build something. Or we do maintenance and everything together. We started constructing our first barrier a year after the flood. So we started constructing in '54, it was ready in '58. There's one Dutch guy over here. Do you know which barrier is the first one we have in the Netherlands? No, don't feel bad because no one knows it. That's what all the people think. This is the first one. The Dutch IJssel barrier. This is the first storm surge barrier in the Netherlands. Why we start here, so all the way into the land, not at sea. This barrier protects the lowest part of the country. The deepest point is almost -7, the lowest point of the country. The whole area from Delft all the way to here is a couple of meters below sea level. So we started constructing the first barrier to protect the lowest part of the country. And then we built everything and we finished with this barrier. So this barrier outside is the final project of the Delta Works. So all the people who live at the back are safe. We also have our dikes here, but I live here. I was born and raised in this small village. It's called Hoek of Holland. It is literally the hoek of a part of Holland. And I'm protected by a very different way. My protection is the beach and the sand dunes. The beach in my village, as you can see, is a very wide beach. It hasn't been that wide all the time because I'm from 1973. And when I was, let's say, almost 10 years old, they started elevating the beach and make it wider. So we pushed the sea a little bit back, and now the beach is much wider than it was in the past. How do we do it? We get sand from the bottom of the sea, of course. Ships come back, and they spray the sand into the beach, and slowly the beach gets wider and gets elevated. We still do that part, but nowadays we work together with nature. How do we do that? Number 3 on the map, the sand mower. The only thing we did in 2010, we created an island of sand in front of the coast. But from that day on, nature took over. Because what's happening now? The waves of the sea and the current of the sea will spread the sand from the island and put it on the old beach. Every day, some sand is transported from the island to the beach. The process will take more than 25 years. And after 25 years, the island will be gone and the beach is much wider than it was in the past. We're already 10 years later now, and you see the beach is changing already. So it's a very wide project, it's a couple of kilometers wide, and the beach is getting wider and it's a higher level also. All done by nature itself, so it's a beautiful project. Questions about this map?
Yeah, maybe you may ask,
Yeah.
which part is below sea level?
Almost everything.
Oh, okay.
The part you see here, the average for this area is -2, so 2 meters below sea level. But more than 40% of the country is below sea level. I'm going to show you later on an animation. But from this part, the satellite view you see here, so not the lower part, but the satellite image, it's an average of 2 meters below sea level. Yeah. With the deepest point over here, we got some higher places, also the coastal area is a couple of meters above sea level, but the lowest part is at the back of Rotterdam. Yeah?
So, how many dams do we have like this
Like this, only one.
Like this only one?
How the other ones look like?
Okay.
That's over here.
So they are trying to...
Yeah.
Did you see Utrecht on the map?
No, where is it? Right,
This is,
Perspective.
this is all just Rotterdam. This one.
No, no. This is Rotterdam.
Where is the lake? Where is the...
Just to
Where is the body?
No problem.
Are you? Why not?
Okay, so what did we do to protect the coastal area? It's not only barriers, it's dams, it's dikes, it's everything together. This Delta Plan, as we call it, that was creation of barriers and dams. It took 40 years to complete everything. So we started with this one in 58 and we ended with both of these in 97. And you see everything is closed off except this. This is still a big opening we have. Why is this open? This is the entrance for the ships to go to Antwerp. That's the big Belgian port. So we couldn't close this, otherwise the ships couldn't pass anymore to Antwerp. Then you say, okay, then build a barrier like this to keep open arms and close when necessary. But you see, this area is much wider than this over here. So it was impossible to build a barrier like this. This is the maximum barrier like this we can have outside. This is much wider, so it was impossible to build a barrier here. That's why we elevated all the dikes in this area. So the dikes in these areas are even higher and stronger than they're in the rest of the country, to also make sure those people are safe.
So the movable barrier is only that one in Newfoundland, and the other ones are
fixed, because there's no harbor at the back.
No
this
harbor.
had to be open to make sure the ship can go to the harbor, right? So that was the biggest challenge for this barrier. For the rest, everything is closed permanently.
And how wide is
360 meters from here to the other side.
Wow.
360. So it still is wide. But this is much wider. This is even, I think, 1.5 kilometers. So it was impossible to build a barrier like this. Yeah. Of course, Dutch are famous of building construction like this. So every country, you guys coming from Kenya, from Iraq, from everywhere. When a country needs help for water protection, they come to this building. It's my job. I receive all delegations from all over the world. Ministers, presidents who want to know, how do you guys do it? I always explain two things. People always say we are that smart to build everything, but we're also that stupid to live in the low area. What is smart then, right? That's one. Second thing is, we can do this because of our tax systems. We pay a lot of tax in this country, even up to 50%. So that's a lot of what people earn. Half of the money goes to the government. But a part of that money is used for water protection. Every year, €1 billion goes inside that special place. So we get all the money together. That means in the future, we can build something new. The money will be there. And in between, we can do maintenance. That tax system is never, ever somewhere around the world. It's only in this country. So because of that system, we can do this. But to change your tax system is very difficult for a country to do. Because people are used to pay a couple of, let's say, some amount of taxes, but you cannot raise it until 50%. So it's much more difficult for other countries to get the money together. For example, the United States. The United States has a big problem with big hurricanes.
Yes.
They had Katrina in New Orleans in 2005. They had Sandy. I've been to New York many times for my former job. They had Sandy over there. Katrina, the total damage of Katrina was $160 billion. Sandy was $80 billion. So at the end of 2017, I had a visit from the Admiral of the US Coast Guard, so the highest ranked officer for coastal protection. He asked me about the amount we spent to build this barrier. When I told him $500 million, he couldn't believe me. He said that's nothing compared with the damage we had after this big hurricane. So the system we have is to prevent flooding happening. But we had many floods in the past. 10, 20, 30 even. The first flood we know of is 1200 years ago. 1200 years ago. That was the first one. We had many more. So we had so much disaster in this country. So that's why we now say we know what to do. But the challenges are getting bigger. Climate change, sea level rise, the ground is going down. So we sink ourselves. We could get all the groundwater out of the ground, that means you sink. So we sink faster, water comes in more, so the challenges for this country will be bigger and bigger. Yeah.
So the dams, beside blocking water, do they also do other functions like maybe produce energy or I don't know? Do they?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not
At
yet.
first they were only built to stop the water.
Right.
Because after the flood we said we have to close up everything. But the next challenge was, when you close off, this was salt water in the past.
Salt water, okay.
It changed to sweet water. So the whole environment changed. And also the fish that want to go in and want to go upstream, they couldn't come in anymore. So now, for this barrier, the Haring Fleet, this is the crane for Europe. 60% of all the river water that comes into the Netherlands goes out here.
Okay.
So what do we do now? We can open those gates in summertime. So fish can go in, swim upstream, and also some salt water comes in. So we get it back to where it was. So at first we only said stop the water. That's what we have to do. And we don't think about anything else. But now we look more to the environment, to nature. So how can we work together with everything? And that's a big challenge for the future. Yeah? This way. So in, let's say 15 minutes we go out, we're going to walk past the barrier. You see the lower tubes, the white tube at the back? They're this size. So the steel is 9 centimeters thick and is 180 in centimeters. So I can almost stand it. I'm a little bit taller than that. So this is how big the tubes outside are. Because when we go outside, they're hanging a little bit above you, so they look smaller, but this is the size. And also the thickness. That's why it's 12,000 tons of steel, 12 million kilograms.
This size.
Like
Yeah.
the ones, vertical ones or the...
No, they're smaller, no? The horizontal ones. Yeah. The lower and the top ones.
They are the floaters. They provide the...
They float first and then they get filled with water also to let it sink. And I'm going to explain more about that. So imagine when we go out later on, it's this part, okay? This way.
Yeah, one question here, please.
No, sorry.
Yeah. How do you prevent that one from... I believe there is sand in the bottom of the sea.
No.
How do you prevent that from sinking? Like...
There's
It's
concrete on the bottom.
Well, concrete.
There's a concrete, so there, this is just of course a scale model, but at the bottom of the river, there's a concrete construction. Yeah. So otherwise it gets stuck into the mud.
So Francis, they built some kind of belt of concrete here, all the way from the start to here, and then these tires, it actually floats.
Yeah, there are no tires.
There is no tires.
This is just
It
for the
floats.
scale model.
It floats all the way
There are
here.
no tires.
It floats and then filled with water and sink down.
Yeah, I'm going to explain it outside when we walk over the...
That's how I understand from there.
Okay, this way.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So good.
If you guys can please stand on this side.
Yes.
Okay, on this square, I'm going to show you 5 scenarios we're dealing with in this country. The first scenario I'm going to show you have to forget instantly. Because I'm going to show you first what would happen with the country without protection. So tomorrow we say take away everything, that will be really stupid because then this is possible. Here we go. Watch the screen please. So we're going to zoom out. This is the Netherlands and more than 40% is below sea level, the orange part. So we need protection very hard. At the coastal area, with our dams and our systems together. If you put all the dikes in this country in one row, you can walk from here to New Zealand, the other side of the world. More than 17,000 kilometers of dikes to protect this small country. Without protection, this is possible. More than half the country will be gone and Amersfoort will be at sea. This is a city in the middle of the country, right? So we cannot do without protection.
What was that little spot where you didn't...
There's some elevated places, so some parts will be a little bit above the water, but that's an island then. It cannot be reached anymore. So the same as the coastal area, we are dry at the coast, we cannot reach something anymore. So we don't want that to happen, so that's why it's very important to have all these constructions. Okay, scenario 2. Can you push the button over there, please, for me? Yeah. So you can see what's happening. We're gonna let it storm now. Yes, please. Thank you. Yeah, this way again. It starts within a few seconds. So a very special storm is coming in now, and even our barrier has to close. How it looks like when a storm is coming in, and the most dangerous way from us is the northwest. Wind from the northwest in combination with spring tide, that means a lot of extra water coming in. Sorry, I'm going to push this out. Okay. What do? We can now close our front doors. The biggest front door we have is in Zeeland, the Eastern Shelf barrier. All these big slides, 9 kilometers in total, all the slides go down, Zeeland is safe. This is our barrier. I'm going to explain more outside, so how it works, I'll come back with you in a few minutes. We have the small sister I was telling you about, to protect the backside of Rotterdam. And the oldest one from 58 is this one. So all different constructions, all do the same thing, give protection to the people who live behind it. But now for me, not only for me, but all the people who live in the coastal area, Make sure your beaches are elevated and they get wider. So we get sand from the bottom of the sea and transport it to the beaches from the other side, reinforce the sand dunes. Now the sand motor. I told you about that system. So 2010 we created this island. The last few years this already happened.
Wow.
In the future this will happen. And again, all by the sea itself. We don't have to do anything about it. And finally, the island will be gone. And you see how wide the beach is in comparison to how it was before. Great project we have.
So there are a number of them.
No, these are weak spots along our coastline. We're working on it at the moment to make sure we keep them safe for many, many years to come. We never finish. We do one project, next year you have to start another one. So working together is very special and it's very important to do. Okay. This is only danger from the sea. The danger is also coming from the other side. The blue lines you're standing on.
What?
The rivers.
The rivers.
Yeah. Last year in July we had a flood in this area. Over here at Maastricht. We had flooding because this is the Maas that's coming in from Belgium and from France. And over here, this is the Rhine River that's coming in from Germany.
Okay.
In the future, more and more water will come from this way also. Because we got more rainfall, the snow is melting, the glaciers are melting, so more water will come to us. We cannot stop the water. We're like the drain of Europe, we're the lowest part. So the water will reach us. So we have to deal with extra water in the future. There's a project which is called Room for the River. What did we do to make sure we're safe?
Go there tomorrow.
You're going there tomorrow. Okay, this is a great build up then. Here we go.
What's gonna happen?
So this is the Rhine. We're going to zoom in this area. So imagine a lot of rainfall in Germany, okay? And if the rain is falling over there, within 1 or 2 days, it will be in our country. So we deal with it in a very special way. What did we do in the project Room for the River, which you're going to see tomorrow? We didn't build any houses or factories anymore too close to the river shore. Give water more room to pass. Move this away. Don't build anymore too close to the river. Second thing, make your rivers deeper. You make something deeper, more water can pass. It sounds easy, but it works. But in very special circumstances, this will not be enough. And then we create new rivers. Bypasses. Here we go. So when you make a bypass, the river can split into two. So the water doesn't go too high, no water is going over it because of flood, and then discharges into sea. Another problem is that most of our villages are laying lower than surrounding rivers. So the water doesn't go out by itself. If there's rainfall, you don't want to keep all the water because then water will come up too high. So we have to pump the water out into our canals and then into the rivers to finally discharge into the sea. So again, nothing goes by itself in this country. We always need to help nature a little bit to make sure we stay safe. That's the biggest challenge we have. Okay, so danger from the sea. We have protection against that. Danger from the river. We can protect ourselves against that. But once every 1,000 years, there will be a day, those two problems come at the same day. So we get high discharge of river water, at the same time a big storm is coming in. What do we do then? Can you push this button over there?
No,
Left, yeah, that one.
you thought about that? Too?
Here we go.
So from both. Yeah.
From both sides. What can we do then in that very special day? We have a solution for that also. You're gonna hear everything happening first. You're gonna see it happening on the map also. The blue arrows you're gonna see is high discharge river water. Here we go on the screen. At the same time you see the big storms coming in to push all the water to this area. So to stop the water from the sea, we close our front door. But when you close your door, nothing can get in, but also nothing can get out anymore. And then the river water can discharge anymore, you have a big problem.
Yes.
Well, how do we deal with that? We're going to store the river water. Where do we store it? In our lakes. We raised the dikes in our lakes. That means we can keep more water there. The lake in this area is over here, the orange line you're going to see. We're here, okay? So instead of river water going out and causes a flood because the barriers are closed, we store it in the lake. And we keep it there as long as the front door is closed. When the front door opens again, because danger from the sea is over, then we let the water back into the river, and then finally it can still discharge into the sea. So temporarily stores the water to make sure no flood can happen from the other side, even in this very special day. Okay?
And the lakes, they don't overflow?
No, that's why we elevated the dikes around it. So in this lake only, the water level can reach about more than 2 meters, and that's enough to store the river water, nothing can happen. Okay, we have been talking about too much water every time, but the summers, you're used to it, dry summers, but also in this country, it will be dry periods longer.
Yeah.
Drought is a very different problem, but still is a big problem. Drought causes 2 problems. First one, salt water. When river water drops, because there's no rainfall, salt water comes in.
Yeah.
Further than it normally does. And for the environment, salt water, of course, is not a good combination. So we have to deal with the salt water. The second thing is our dikes. Our dikes get more vulnerable if the river water drops. Why? Final part. Can you push the last one, please? I promise you it's the last one. Yeah, thank you.
My lovely assistant.
It always works perfectly. Okay, here we go. So you hear the sound of summer, and you're going to see what happens first. In a few seconds, you're going to see the orange part, and the orange part is salt water. And you see the normal situation first, if you got enough river water. Later you're going to see what can happen if river water drops. So this is normal, but this can happen with the salt water in this area, and there's not enough river water. And salt water is not a good combination with what we see over here. So we have a big economical damage if this could happen. So what do we do then? I told you about the lakes. In wintertime, we save some water in our lakes. And we can use the water in summertime. So when we see the river water drops, we use water out of the lakes to let the river water come up, and salt water will be stopped. So we keep the level on where it has to be, with the extra sweet water we can have. And now our dikes. This can be possible in dry periods. And turn around to this picture, this way a little bit. I think you remember, this was Vilnius, 2003. A dike collapsed in the middle of the summer. Vilnius, yeah. And first we thought, what happened with this dike? How can a dike collapse in such a beautiful summertime? Then we started investigating the dike. These dikes are made of peat. It's very good material, we have a lot of it in this country, but there's one big problem. Don't let it dry out. When peat dries out, it starts cracking.
What's the Dutch word? Because I don't know. Peat.
Veen.
Veen. Okay.
Finally, you see all these big cracks? They were so big, finally the dike collapsed. And what happened? It broke and all the water reached this area. So a lot of damage over here. No casualties, but still a lot of damage for these houses. Nowadays, it doesn't happen anymore, because now, when there are dry periods like this, we do a lot more inspections in the dike, on the dikes itself. And we're gonna see that peat is getting too dry. What do you do in your garden in summertime? Water it. When you water the dike, the peat stays wet and solid, and this cannot happen anymore. It sounds easy, but it works. But to act in front is always more important than to act afterwards. So that's why we do very good in this country. We all work very close together to keep our feet dry. But again, we cannot promise everyone in this country to keep feet dry, because when you live in a very dangerous area, you choose yourself to live there, there's a chance you can flood. But when you live in a protected area, you can say you're safe. Yeah? Questions about the inside part? No?
Yeah, there was a year mentioned, 2015, on
Yeah.
this reservoir for
Yeah.
storing the water, which comes in with the rivers, or when you need it for dealing with the salty water.
Both.
And this is since 2015, because this is something I didn't know.
Yeah, it was even beginning of 2016. The animation is a little bit older than that, so we expect it to be finished in 2015. It's already finished at the beginning of 2016.
Okay.
So the Volkerak Lake, in the southern part near Brabant, when you go drive all the way from here to Brabant, you pass the Volkerak, Haringvliet Bridge, maybe you know it.
Yeah.
At the back you see the lake, and that's the lake we elevated. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I knew about keeping the water out. I knew about, because I live right next to the dike in the middle of Utrecht.
Okay, so you know how it
So,
works.
when I grew up, it was a small one, and then they put it further back from
Yeah.
the river and made it higher.
Yeah, that's how we do it.
It's large.
So you got to reclaim land. So sometimes people they have a farm very close to the dike, but those people have to move. Of course, they get money for it, because we need to change the dike, move it a little bit back, make it wider to make sure it can deal with everything. So that plan, our delta plan we have, is not we think, oh, this dike needs to be elevated a little bit. No, we elevate it much more than a little bit to make sure it's safe for many years. Otherwise, every 10 years, you have to move it somewhere. You make it bigger at once. You have to move some people, but then it's finished and then it's good.
So I saw a logo in the theater when we were sitting there. Ice Bear or something like that. Something.
Ice Storm.
Ice Storm.
Ice Storm. Yeah, that's the. I'm gonna explain something about this.
Yes.
It's the same one over here.
Yeah, Ice Storm. So
Ice
what's
Storm
that program?
is an international network for storm surge barriers.
Okay.
So it started 12 years ago between people from this barrier here and people from the Thames barrier in London. This one. A lot of knowledge is there also. They came together, they had a meeting and they said, okay, we have to do something global in the future because then climate change came up a little bit already. They say more countries need barriers in the future. So now the network is a big network with many countries joined to make sure we can share knowledge. So we can tell people from abroad what we did, but we can also learn from them. Because how can people will say, you guys know everything? No, that's not true. These barriers we have now are already, the newest one is 25 years old already. So the idea is almost 40 years old. Now, if you build a barrier, there are new technologies, new techniques. So we can learn from those techniques again for in the future, build new ones for ourselves. So the network is not only Dutch people tell everyone how they have to work, no. We come together. Last week there was the first meeting again after 2 years of COVID. So people from the United States were here, from England, from Italy, and from also other countries. And then they have a whole week together to discuss everything. And in between those meetings, they have online meetings, of course, to deal with everything they deal with. Yeah. Okay? We go out now. So we go this way. One question, do you know who's paying for the tour? Because we have no idea. Normally when the comes, they pay inside. But now, so what's the deal? Do you have any idea?
I have some tickets.
Who's your contact over there at the IS?